Hey, good evening. Welcome to Foreigner in the Philippines. It's a late night chat, and it's based on a quote that a recent new friend and made when he said, in any relationship you have to have truth and trust, and how one is intertwined with the other, isn't it? How can you trust someone if you don't think that you're being given the truth? Now, the reason that this interests me very much is because of that point in the Philippine culture which addresses confrontation. Well, it doesn't actually address confrontation. It denies that confrontation should be there. If you ask someone in the Philippines a question which they feel might embarrass, they will not tell you what they really think. Now, in the West, you might consider that this is a lie. So you have to be very careful about how you address things when you're in the Philippines, because assuming that you are going to be talking to a Filipina about a possible union for the rest of your life, then it's important to be able to know exactly what is the truth and what is not the truth. And this is very difficult, because what happens is that they get used to, the average Filipino will get used to the way of getting through the day with the least aggravation. Isn't that the famous quote of George Burns, the late George Burns, the great American comedian? And he said, he was asked, "How do you do it, George? You look so great and you look happy, and you're well into your 80s." And he said, "I try to get through every day with the least amount of aggravation possible." He also made some other great quotes as well, which I choose not to ignore. He said that any great speech has two things: it has a beginning and an end, and the two should be as close to each other as possible, which I often choose to ignore. So, getting back to the idea of truth and trust, I feel that trust should be something which the one who wants to be trusted demonstrates as being a fact in the relationship without being asked. That they should voluntarily see things from the viewpoint of their partner and do things in a way which they can be seen to be trustworthy. Now, you can't have trust, as our new friend said, Alfred actually. Alfred said that you cannot have trust without truth. So you have to be able to discern what is the truth that runs through the relationship that you have, especially with a Filipino, because all of these videos are really about getting on in the Philippines. They're about what a simple life in the Philippines really means. So how would you be able to trust someone? Well, Beth has a saying of her own. She says, "Keep your eyes and your ears open, but trust everyone." I have another way of looking at it. I say, trust everyone, but count your change. Whoever is the most poetic is the one that you'll choose for yourself. But trust is something that you need to think ahead of, so that it can be established in your relationship. And the way of doing that is to be completely open. Now, do you do that completely up front? Well, I always feel that the easiest time to get everything said that you need to say in a relationship is up front. If you as a woman are never going to go to a ball game because you just can't stand going to a ball game, the time to say it is up front. If you're a man that doesn't like shopping, then you got to say it up front. That's when it's the easiest. So a lot of people don't do this because they feel that it might be a deal breaker on a relationship that they have high hopes for. Well, if you have high hopes for a relationship, it should be based on the reality of you think that you're going to be able in years to come to both trust and believe that person. But not just that, that you're going to have things in common, that you're going to be able to talk to that person. All of these things are very important. There were lots of things which for me made a lot of sense, and that was and I often refer people to this book because I think it was an excellent book, and it was Are You the One for Me? And it was by a writer called Barbara DeAngelis. One of the things that she said in there is that you need to like the way that your partner to be, this is when you're assessing whether the person in front of you for the first time is going to be the one that you're going to be able to live with for the rest of your life, assuming that you believe that marriage is the way to go. So you need to be able to like the way that they talk. One thing that she doesn't say, but which I say, is you need to have a fairly close relationship of speed. Does the other person talk and react at about the same speed as you? Because if you're one of these lightning talkers, just babbling away, then if you have somebody who takes their time on responding, it will drive you insane. If you're saying to your prospective partner, so shall we go and see a movie? Yeah, a movie? You'll be insane in about 3 days, I would think. So you need to have someone who speaks a similar speed. The other side of that coin, of course, would be if you like to take your time in thinking things through, and the other person is speaking, as I always call Beth's mom, my mother-in-law, the machine gun nanai meaning mother, because when she talks and she is on the excited side of emotion, it sounds like machine gun fire. So you need to be able to talk, and to talk at a rate, a speed of delivery which makes sense to you and doesn't leave you being too rushed or agonizingly waiting for the response that you desire. So that's very important too. But the other thing that DeAngelis says is you need to like the way that the person looks when they're fully dressed. And it also is nice to like the way that they dress when they're fully undressed. You need to like the way that they smell. You need to like the way that they sound. You need to like the way that they move and walk. You need to like these things in order to be able to avoid being driven insane in later life together. But You need to be able to cope with the difference in culture between you and your partner. If you are a foreigner of whatever origin and she is a Filipina, because she will not choose to be confrontational, and she is likely, not, it's not 100%, but she's likely to expect that you will talk soft. That's not such a challenge for me, because the British tend to talk softer, certainly, than the Americans, and the Americans talk louder than the British. You got to take that for what it's worth. I remember going into a restaurant in LA. Some of you Americans who are looking in on this will know this. It's a place called Ed DeBevick's, and Ed DeBevick's was like a 50s diner, done out like a 50s diner, and they would employ a lot of, for their waiters and waitresses, they would employ actors and actresses who would create their own persona for how they wanted to appear, but they were very entertaining. Now when you walked into Ed DeBevick's, it was so loud, everybody is speaking at such a volume, you feel like you've come into a wild party and you're the only one that actually hasn't been invited. So it illustrates that that say Americans, for instance, are inclined to speak louder than say the British. I can remember getting into the underground, the tube in London in rush hour when everybody is going home from work, and you could hear newspapers rustling as people opened their newspapers, because they didn't tend to be talking, and if they were talking, they'd be talking quietly so that everybody didn't know their business. You couldn't have that in the same way in, say, an American situation. So things are different. But running through all of this, you've got truth and trust. And you need to be able to trust the person. And in order to be able to trust the person, you have to know that if you ask a question of any importance, you will be told the truth. Now, in my life, I have been on both sides. When I was in the army, I learned that a quick way to be in a great deal of trouble was to tell the truth too much. So if you had been asked a question when you're in the army and you know that the answer, if it's answered truthfully, will get you in a ton of trouble, you learn, as the Americans always say, to be economical with the truth. And when I came out of the army, I had to reprogram myself in order to be able to get through that and to learn to tell the truth again. And of course, everybody, no matter what anybody says, everybody is a work in progress. We're all trying to be more honest, we're all trying to be more ethical, we're all trying to be more truthful and more trustworthy. I read a very good book called The Little Book of Wisdom, and The Little Book of Wisdom, it talked about how if you are in a position where you are exposed to the public or being looked at from any angle, you need to be, as I said right at the beginning of this chat, you need to be seen to be trustworthy. And this means that you do not put yourself in situations which can be misinterpreted. He made the point, the writer made the point, he was in a public relations company. He owned a public relations company, and one of the things that he found was that his staff were mixed. They were male and female, and both the males and the females, not in all cases, but in some cases, were married. Now, very often, if two people went out on an assignment and perhaps travelled somewhere, they might be married to different people. He found that the best way to make sure that no one misinterpreted what was happening was that they would travel separately, they would stay in separate hotels, and they would arrive at the place of their project, their assignment, from different directions. In other words, it couldn't be misinterpreted as that they were staying in the hotel. Oh really? None of that. They could be seen to be trustworthy. So the other thing of telling the truth, you need to be able to recognize that in the main, if you are a trustworthy person, you can't be trusted for telling your truth, because in order to be trustworthy, you have to be ethical. You have to have some integrity. So this is one of the side effects of deciding that you are going to tell the truth. Once you've decided that you're going to tell the truth, then you have to address whether what you're doing is right or wrong. And this means that you have to approach your life with a whole different view on integrity and being righteous. So, two vital words from our friend Alfred: truth and trust. Thank you, Alfred, for the inspiration of doing this video. You got to be trustworthy. You got to be seen to be trustworthy. Truthful. If you want the truth, you need to be able to tell the truth. Here's one of the things about being a liar, is that after a while, the person not only loses sight of whether what they are saying is the truth or not, but their ability to tell whether someone else is telling them the truth is very heavily affected, because they usually look at what other people tell them in the light of, well, if they were in that other person's situation, would they believe that they were being honest? And if the answer is, well, if I was in that position, I would not be honest about that, then there you have the answer. They would not believe someone, even though that someone was telling the truth. So the truth is something that is infectious. Thank you for listening. It's a very tiny look into how you need to be able to address a relationship with a Filipina for trust and for truth. Thanks for looking in. This is a foreigner in the Philippines.